Live from the Hoboken Historical Museum in Uptown Hoboken, it's Hoboken Talks, a weekly show in which we talk to the movers, the shakers, the pickers, the grinners, the lovers, the sinners, the people who make Hoboken what it is, the great place that it is. And this week, very honored to have with us the one, the only, he says it rhymes with lucid, Irwin Chusid. He's a landmark preservationist. What does that mean? We'll get into that. Long-time WFMU radio personality. This text normally isn't on this slide. We're mixing it up. He's a writer. He's a producer. He's a bon vivant, a longtime Hoboken resident. Let's welcome him to Hoboken Talks. Irwin Chusid. You don't applaud for yourself. And I'm Jack Silbert, and this is episode 43 of Hoboken Talks. You've seen everyone.
Hi, buddy.
Hey, pal. We're neighbors.
Long-time neighbors.
Long-time neighbors. And we're live.
I totally threw you off. Can we start again?
No, we can't. You know why we can't? Because we're live. If you're watching this Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern, then we're live, and people are watching on Facebook.
Okay.
They're watching on Twitter.
These are what they refer to as social media.
Yeah, the YouTube.
Yeah,
they're on YouTube. And if you are watching live, a great and interactive thing is you go in and there you can make little, you have comments, you have questions for Irwin, or you just want to say hello,
or cut the crap, whatever.
Or you can do that. You can do that, and we welcome your contributions to the show.
Now, Jack, you did say that childhood photographs are big crowd pleasers.
We're gonna get to the childhood photograph in a second.
Isn't that where everything starts?
That's a whole other show. But in addition to the landmark, is that a fan? Are you a construction worker?
No, landmark preservation.
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
I can explain it, but I will.
We'll get to that. You're also you've been seen at meetings of like the 19th century baseball guys association. I think that's the name of it officially. You're proto ball, as it's called.
Unofficially, proto ball geeks.
The early origins of the early days, and a number of years ago, knowing that this was an interest of yours, I invited you to join me on the campus of Stevens, where the Hoboken Nine were playing the what's the name of that? Then the Chamonix, whatever they call the Flemington farmer markets.
There you go. Under the
Flemington traffic circles.
Under the 1864 rules.
Under the 1860, but you refused to come with me.
No, I went. I did see a game there.
A revisionist history. All right, but
I saw another game. They were playing under 1864 rules.
Okay. Here's the thing. This is I think when you come into town from the northern end, it says birthplace Hoboken, birthplace of baseball, Frank Sinatra and baseball.
One of those is true.
Which
Frank Sinatra was born in Hoboken.
Yes, on December 12th, birthday coming up. There's a statue at Sinatra Park. So
right.
Everyone can see
there's evidence about his birth.
Yes.
There is certainly.
But Hoboken is beloved for being the first game of baseball was played right here.
Did you see me roll my eyes?
Let's see it again. Can we zoom in? No.
Hoboken was not the birthplace of baseball. Hoboken was one of the pivotal locations for the development of baseball early on. It was absolutely a critical part of baseball's origins. But baseball was not invented here. The first game wasn't played here. But I understand from a public relations standpoint, it benefits the municipality to say we're the birthplace of baseball because they can put it on a sign at the north and south entrances to town.
Does it have a better claim than other places?
It has an equal claim to Brooklyn can also be called. It would be Manhattan, but the teams that would have been playing in Manhattan, they were running out of space as Manhattan was developing ever more northward. There were fewer and fewer places for them to play, so they would take the ferry over to the Elysian Fields in Hoboken or take it over to Brooklyn. And Brooklyn just had so many teams that just blossomed. And Hoboken, there weren't Hoboken-based teams,
Right.
but games were played here by people from New York.
All right, fair enough. That wasn't.
However, one last thing.
Yes.
The first documented game of baseball,
yes,
where they actually have a score sheet. They know what the final score was, who the players were, what the teams were. That was played in Hoboken in 1845 or 46.
Oh, that's pretty. See, that wasn't as. I see. Now I don't think this segment is going to go viral.
Right.
I thought people would be throwing things at the screen and
it would be great right now. Childhood fiction.
burning you in effigy. Let's go to the first slide. And the director of Hoboken Talks, and he's behind the scenes, Rand Hoppy, who's the collections manager here at the museum. All this technical wizardry that's him. So Rand, can we see the now who's this kid?
Oh, isn't he adorable?
What's going on here?
That would have been, I think, my kindergarten, first grade, or possibly second grade photo from Hawthorne Avenue School in Newark. And as far as I can remember, that's the last time I wore a bow tie.
So
Look at the crooked smile. Oh, isn't that adorable?
Born and raised in Newark.
No, born in
What?
Newark. We moved out when I was 7.
Okay, where did you move to?
Maplewood.
A fine and upstanding.
So I grew up in Maplewood.
Grew up in Maplewood. All right, and let's look at another image. This is, you would have been a Maplewood resident at this time.
Now, I was living in Maplewood. I was 9. This was at a place called Berra Rizzuto Lanes on Route 3 in Clifton, New Jersey. I don't know why this fellow, who was a Hall of Fame catcher for the Yankees, I don't know why he insisted on having his photo taken with me. But I acceded. And I thought, so, okay, sure, I'll pose with Yogi. And then just, back off.
The great Yogi Berra. And there's a Yogi, the Yogi Berra Museum is located not too far from Maplewood.
So did you know they had a bowling alley?
I did know that because there's a display at the Yogi Berra Museum.
Of Berra Rizzuto Lanes.
Just an image or something.
My father was really into bowling. So he heard Yogi was going to be there, and he took me there, and maybe we bowled. And
you were a bowling enthusiast.
Yes. Next topic.
Okay. All right. Back to the 2-shot. Thank you, Rand. In a concise manner, if possible. Take us from growing up in Maplewood.
Graduated Columbia High School, 1969.
Okay.
Played in the Columbia High School orchestra with a great drummer, young drummer, a classmate by the name of Max Weinberg. He was much better than me.
But you're a drummer as well.
I'm a drummer as well, but he went on to much bigger things in that field. He was great. Even then, he had style. Max had class. I didn't.
He's performing soon at the City Winery. He's got a show he does when he's not.
I was going to retitle it the Max Weinbergery. Next topic.
High school.
College, briefly at the University of Bridgeport.
Okay.
Dropped out after 2 years. I didn't know what the hell I was doing in college. I didn't like getting a collective education. I didn't want to raise my hand and wait to be acknowledged. If I had a question, I wanted to go one-on-one with people and be mentored. So
Now,
I dropped out of college.
Was music already like a passion?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, from an early
the
age.
age of Oh gosh, as when my age was in single digits. My parents always had music on, but it was just popular music. I was hearing the Chordettes and Perry Como and Nat King Cole and maybe some Duke Ellington and Dave Brubeck, things like that. But it was sinking in.
All right.
I was
All
getting a
right.
little feel for jazz and pop music, and then I discovered rock and roll and my little transistor radio that I kept under my pillow. And from that point on, I was pretty much hyper focused on music, among other subjects.
What are some of those other subjects?
Baseball,
Okay.
bowling,
Bowling.
humor.
Humor.
I read a lot of humor
Sure.
in those days, and I watched probably too much TV.
Okay.
But I quickly, once I went over to college, I stopped watching television. I never really regained the habit.
Oh, there's some quite good things on there.
I watch things occasionally, but
a lot of people will watch this broadcast, because with such items as the Amazon Fire Stick. No, but you can. Has anyone sent us any free stuff at all?
I was telling Jack.
Not even the people at
the way he
Nice Water. For a nice water, drink nice.
When Jack told me how this whole thing is set up, I said it really sounds like the revival of public access TV.
Well, in a way it is. But I'm saying a lot of people watch. You don't have to sit at your laptop. You zap and it's on your TV.
Yeah,
people are sitting in their living rooms watching you right now.
And if they watch it when it's archived later, they can hit stop. They can watch it in episodes.
Do whatever they like.
They can turn it off and watch something else. Went away to college, came back, moved to a little hippie house in Montville, New Jersey.
Okay.
For a couple of years, then moved to South Orange, then to Montclair. Lived in Montclair from 1982 to 92.
At some point in here, now again, you're doing various jobs, odd jobs.
Oh yeah, I did not have a career.
Yeah,
I didn't have a focus. I didn't have a career. I didn't have ambition. I was an arrested adolescent who kind of was pursuing various interests and passions and hobbies and curiosities.
Drove a cab?
No, didn't drive a cab.
I'm just kidding.
What
were some of the things you did?
I worked at Port Newark in a Dole pineapple distribution. I work on a forklift and just dealing with why am I even remembering this? What the hell else did I do? I worked in various offices. I was a secretarial temp, and I was damn good at it. Did that for a number of years because I didn't want to commit to a career or a job. I worked at a porn house for a summer. I was manager of a porn house.
Squeegee Boy?
It was the Art Theater in Irvington, New Jersey on Springfield Avenue. All right. My father knew the guy. I was 21, so I was of age, and he needed somebody to be the manager, the evening manager for the summer. So I did that.
That sounds tremendous.
It was freaking awful.
Okay.
It was not a memorable
because
job.
of the clientele or because of the
clientele, the general ambience of the place, and frankly, the movies really sucked.
At some point in here, you come across this as a college radio station.
Okay, if we're going to jump to FMU, we can do that.
We're just a chronological purposes.
Okay, among my childhood passions is radio. I loved radio.
Yeah,
love TV too, but radio has stayed with me. I like the voice without the pictures because you can multitask while the radio's on. But I really loved radio, and of course there was an explosion of FM radio in the late '60s. Sure, it was AM to a certain point, and then something the FCC did that had to do with simulcasting AM and FM signals, and they said to the FM stations, you've got to broadcast original content. You can't simply rebroadcast what is on the AM affiliate. And it was an explosion of underground radio in the mid '60s, and I absolutely, was glued to my radio from that point on to FM radio, which was a clearer signal. Yeah, and it was it was a kind of a lawless frontier for a number of years.
What are we talking about? WNEW?
WNEW-FM with Roscoe and Allison Steele and Scott Muni and whoever the hell else. And there were other stations too on the FM band. And one of them was FMU, which was taken over by a bunch of hippies in 68, I believe.
Okay.
I listened to it briefly.
From the campus of
Upsala College in East Orange, New Jersey.
Okay.
I listened to it a bit, and actually in 1969, before I graduated high school, I played, is it called hooky? I went truant,
Yeah.
which was a common thing at the end of your high school education.
Sure.
Before you graduated.
Senior skip days, I think some of the kids call
And my younger brother Dan took me to this house in East Orange.
and Chusid.
It was a yellow house referred to as Old Yeller, and it was where WFMU was then located, and they were doing a fundraiser. And I don't remember many details except people taking calls and writing down pledges, and there being a record library, and people just hanging around, probably smelling like ganja. And it seemed like kind of a cool place to be. But I think I only visited a couple times. I didn't really meet anyone there. And I didn't realize that years later it would have such an impact on me. When I moved to Montville, I was working for a underground newspaper in New Jersey called the Aquarian.
Sure.
I worked there briefly.
Still exists, I believe.
Is it owned by the same guy? Because if it is, I won't say what I would otherwise would say about my departure from the Aquarian.
You can say it.
Can I?
Sure.
I won't mention his name.
All right.
I was doing different jobs at the paper, and it was apparent that I was really good at all these jobs and that I was better at these jobs than the guy who owned and ran the paper. And at some point, I think he simply felt threatened by my awesome talents and skills.
Okay.
So he canned me. I collected unemployment for a while, and during the time, I spending a lot of time at home in this hippie house up in Lake Valhalla in Montville, and listening to WFMU and thinking, God, it's terrible. What happened to freeform? It wasn't freeform. I should also back up and say I spent some time when I went to the University of Bridgeport. I spent a lot of time at WPKN, which was also a freeform station.
Okay.
I was only peripherally
and
involved.
For the people who don't, and I don't know who's out there watching that wouldn't know, but freeform is most radio that you would listen to with commercials on it and things. It's tightly formatted, but these stations.
Unpredictable.
No format.
Surprises, spontaneity, mistakes.
Sure.
As I say about WFMU, all the amateurism of college radio without the basketball games.
Okay.
So,
the Princeton station no longer broadcasting the sports.
Because Princeton doesn't own WPRB.
Oh.
They are self-owned.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's another conversation.
All right.
Good station, by the way. So I was hanging out at PKN in Bridgeport, but not only peripherally involved, but I had friends on it. I was one of the editors of the college newspaper. I was a writer.
Right.
So I remember PKN being a freeform powerhouse, and I remember FMU being a freeform powerhouse, but I didn't keep current with FMU. So in '74, I'm listening to the station, what FMU had become, and to me it was really boring and predictable, and it was just a bunch of prog rock and a bunch of guys in a studio. It seemed like there were 4 guys in the studio simultaneously, but 1 microphone, and 3 guys are off mic, and the guy who's on mic is talking, and there's a conversation going on in the room. They seem to be oblivious to the fact that there were people out there listening at home.
Sure.
The music wasn't terribly adventurous. It was boring. I thought, this station needs some more free form. So I went down and offered my services as a DJ.
Okay.
It was one of those things that has been what's the word? It's been a pattern in my life of hearing or seeing something done that I want to do and thinking, I could do that better than they're doing it.
Yeah.
And in some cases, it was people getting paid to do certain things that I can do better than that. And they're getting paid for that.
Yeah.
In the FMU the DJs weren't getting paid, but I listened and said, I can do better than that. So I went down and offered my services, and Bruce Longstreet, the then station manager, said he knew me from when I was working for the Aquarian, and he offered me a slot, and I started doing freeform from the beginning in February 1975. And within two shows, I was
to the
they
present.
wanted to fire me.
Yeah.
They could not accept what I wanted to do. They didn't like it. They felt threatened, and they tried to fire me.
But hard to fire a volunteer.
Well, they said, you're not a student at Uppsala.
Oh, good point.
So I went to the dean, who was
Point Longstreet.
I went to the dean, George Fenwick, who was the faculty advisor for the station, and I said, they want to fire me because they say I'm not a student. And Mr. Fenwick said to me, you don't have to be a student. There's no rule that says you have to be a student. So I went back to the station management and said, Dean Fenwick says I don't have to be a student. And they said, okay, so we can't fire you. So you're suspended. So they suspended me for 3 months.
Okay.
And then they let me back on the air. And from that point, anytime a new staff member would come down to WFMU to try to get involved, I would go up to them, I'd get to them first and try to indoctrinate them in freeform.
And you're still involved today.
Yes.
All right. And we'll get back to that. But now,
what's next?
well, I
knew it.
in the description of you, and even Eric Kammer hasn't said hello yet. So I'm a little concerned.
Go to number 5.
No,
yes,
no, no.
That's
no.
it. Yes, that's it.
Well,
That's me in Hoboken.
you moved to, at what point, what brings you to Hoboken?
I was living in Montclair. This is going to seem a little strange to people who know Montclair now and people who know Maplewood now.
Yeah.
I lived in Maplewood and I couldn't wait to get out. It was just so boring. It's a suburban town. My parents lived there, went to school there, get the hell out. Living in Montclair was becoming increasingly, I was seeing more and more stroller moms in Montclair at the time. This would have been late 80s, early 90s. I think I don't belong here because I'm just, just kind of I don't know. I'm kind of an outsider. So I decided I had more friends in Hoboken than I had in Montclair. So I decided at some point I should move to Hoboken. FMU was still based in East Orange.
Right.
So I moved to Hoboken in 1992 with a roommate. Lived with a couple of roommates.
That roommate, Clarence Clemens.
How'd you know? That's the next photo. So anyway, I moved in 92. And I've lived in one, after 2.5 years in that one spot, I moved to another spot, same street. But Mojo always amazed me because at the time, it was one of the ugliest storefronts I'd ever seen.
Now, this is on 6th Street.
It's no longer there.
Between Clinton and Grand.
Yes, on the north side.
North side.
I was amazed at the dead bugs in the window and the dust and the cobwebs and the dirt and the faded signage, everything about it. So that picture was probably taken, I think in 2006,
2003, your cheat sheet.
By my friend Michelle Boulay, who also lived around the corner from me and co-hosted a program on WFMU with me for many years.
Called Incorrect Music.
Incorrect Music, yeah. So that's me 18 years ago.
Mojo survives. It's on Jefferson
Between
5th and 6th. And
it's upscale now.
Yvonne, well, there's still a lot of tchotchkes, old,
Yvonne's great.
And at least for until very recently has been a WFMU supporter and listener. She is
especially Glenn Jones, right?
IBJ, yes.
Right.
But best tailor in town. That's Mojo for all your tailoring needs. You mentioned that it was never a career. There's the porn theater. There's working a backhoe.
Worked for a mobile DJ for many years, mostly as kind of a glorified roadie.
Yeah. Let me add, because we use the words landmark preservationist.
Yeah.
Are there other people out there with that job, or is that a job that you create? I guess
There are
people who do it for individuals, but
yes,
okay.
exactly.
So explain what we're.
At some point, I realized that there are other people doing what I'm doing, but they tend to be doing it perhaps for one project, one artist,
Right.
one area that's more specific, and they can actually make a career out of it. I think of the late Dean Drummond, who was the landmark preservationist for the Harry Partch instrumentarium. That was something that he had to devote his life to. He was also a composer, but the only thing from a preservation standpoint that he worked on was Harry Partch.
So what are we talking about here? That an artist of some kind, a creator of works, passes away? Do they need to be dead? No,
they can be alive.
They can be alive. Helps if they're not.
Let me take it from here.
Okay, all right.
I did not.
But don't mention Harry Partch,
Instrumentarium.
Yeah. Just spell it out nice and simple for the.
If I get anybody viewing this or listening to this who goes out and explores the work of Harry Partch as a result of me name dropping, I will have done a mitzvah. So I did not at a certain age say, I know what I want to do with my life. I want to be a landmark preservationist.
But what is it? Say what it is.
Landmark preservationist is the marquee. And then the subtitle is, I find things on the scrap heap of history that I know don't belong there, and I salvage them.
Rand does that. You don't see him using some big title like that.
Well, I mean, this building that we're in is salvaging Hoboken's history.
Right.
It's archiving, it's preservation. It's first of all recognizing that something has a certain cultural or artistic aesthetic value,
sure,
and that people don't know about it. They've forgotten about it. It's not being properly administered. It's fallen into the dustbin of history and needs to be retrieved. But again, this is not something I intended to do.
Right.
By way of...
and can I just one more sentence to that? And then you also attempt to monetize it for the family.
Yes and no. No and yes.
Okay. All right.
The no and yes is that when I start doing... the first one was Raymond Scott, okay? Where I...
Why don't we call up image 7? Can we do that?
So that's me at the Mars Sound Archive. By the way, it doesn't look like it, but I think that's the same. I'll take your word for it. But it is a shadow plaid. I'm very fond of rayon shadow plaid vintage shirts. And that's a great one I'm wearing there. And it's a great one I'm wearing here. I'm holding an acetate, might be a glass-based disc of Raymond Scott, private recording, where the Raymond Scott recordings are stored at the University of Missouri in Kansas City. They are there because I negotiated a transfer of what's called the assets of the Raymond Scott collection. We can talk about that later. But this is a great way to get into what I do.
Yeah.
The archive, the landmark preservation. Go to the next one, and I think you'll see Raymond Scott.
All right, so Raymond Scott, for those who don't know, tell us.
Raymond Scott was a band leader in the 30s who had what he called a quintet, the Raymond Scott Quintet. And they did this kind of animated form of novelty jazz. And in the 1940s, that music his publishing got sold to Warner Brothers. And Carl Stalling began adapting all these Raymond Scott melodies in Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies. So all these Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck Roadrunner cartoons they're just peppered with Raymond Scott melodies, but they're just snippets. There's 5 seconds here, 12 seconds there, a minute here, 30 seconds here, of about 12 different Raymond Scott numbers, like Powerhouse,
the classic,
Twilight and Turkey, Dinner Music for a Pack of Hungry Cannibals, War Dance for Wooden Indians, the Toy Trumpet. They're Carl Stalling must have been very fond of Raymond Scott, but Raymond Scott never wrote music for cartoons.
Right.
This was not intended for cartoons. So I had stumbled across his music in the cartoons as a child, but I didn't know what it was. A friend named Byron Werner gave me a cassette of Raymond Scott 78s in the mid-'80s.
Okay.
Byron is a collector. He's an artist. He's an eccentric. He's another outsider. And he said, I think you're going to like this music, and I think you're going to recognize the melodies from Warner Brothers cartoons. And I did. And I became obsessed with Raymond Scott, and I wanted to try and learn more about him. This is pre-internet, when you actually went to a building, I think they were referred to as libraries, where they had these things that used to be called, they were called books.
We have an excellent library here in
How about
Hoboken.
And I had
Fifth.
I had to look through books, jazz history, music history, serious music history, to figure who the hell is this Raymond Scott guy, and how come no one is making a connection between him and the Warner Brothers cartoons?
Yeah.
Because it's like his music is genetically encoded in every Earthling. And I found very few references to him, nothing about the cartoons, until 1988 or 89, when Steve Schneider wrote a book called That's All. Is it That's Not All, Folks? I think it's, yeah, That's All, Folks. I made up That's Not All, Folks. But Steve's book was called That's All, Folks. And it was a great, lavishly illustrated book about Warner Brothers cartoons. There was a whole page in there about Raymond Scott. I'm like, whoa,
yeah.
Finally, it's not, I didn't dream this, that he really was connected to these cartoons. And of course, this page in its chronicle made clear that Raymond Scott had nothing to do with the cartoons. It was Carl Stalling adapting Raymond Scott melodies.
Now, well, is he alive at this point? Or no?
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I had to find out. And it was Byron Werner who actually Byron lived in LA, lived in Sylmar. He found Raymond Scott. You know where he found Raymond Scott? In the phone book. Under Scott.
Sure.
Raymond called. His wife answered, Mitzi.
Mitzi Scott.
Mitzi Scott. This was in 90, I think. And she told Byron that Raymond was alive, but he was very sick. He had a series of strokes, and he couldn't talk, couldn't work. And the story, as it unfolded, the more we learned about it, was that they had very little money. His music was out of print. He couldn't work. They were struggling.
Yeah.
They were in their, Raymond was in his 80s. Yeah, he was in his 80s. Mitzi was in her 70s. And I still had no career, no reliable source of income, but I felt so.
You had a weekly radio show.
I had a weekly radio show, but, and I was playing Raymond Scott occasionally.
Right,
I didn't have a business interest in it. And I was getting calls. What is that? What's Powerhouse? What is that? I've heard that before. Well, yeah, you've heard it in Warner Brothers cartoons. So I eventually spoke to Mitzi, and I offered to help her. And she said, well, I hope you will, because nobody else is helping us. So I undertook to help them without really knowing what the hell I was going to do. All I knew was I thought this music was incredible. I wanted to share it with more people.
Yeah.
Did I think I could make money on it? I don't know. I didn't have a clue. But there was a woman, I need to give a shout out to Leslie Berman.
Okay.
Who used to live in Hoboken. She
All
went
right.
by the name of Mrs. Fish. I'm not sure where she lives now. I've been in touch with her over the years.
Mrs. Fish, if you're out there.
Leslie Berman. She lives
word.
in one of those carriage houses on Court Street.
Yeah.
And she put me in touch with an attorney in New York named Josh Greer.
Okay.
And said, call my friend Josh. Ask him anything you want. I told you to call. He'll help you. I talked to Josh Greer for an hour. He answered every question. I wrote down everything he told me. And he said, call me back in 6 months and let me know if any of this has worked out for you. And he didn't charge me a nickel. I did everything he told me, and it all made sense.
Yeah.
And suddenly I was becoming a professional, an expert in something.
And this led to reissues of.
It took a while.
Yeah.
As I like to put it, I started this when I was 40. At 40, I was broke.
Right.
By the age of 42, I was broke.
Millionaire.
Don't step on my punchlines. Okay. Can I take that? Can I retake that? Okay.
When at 40, you were broke.
At 40, I was broke. At age 42, I was broker.
Yes.
I was spending whatever savings I had, trying to convince the world that they really needed to hear Raymond Scott music. I was trying to get, what company was, they were on Columbia. Back then it was owned by BMG, before Sony came along, I forget. They weren't really interested. It took a while to get Columbia interested in putting out Raymond Scott music. But it all came together in 1991 when a woman named Linda Semensky, who worked for Nickelodeon.
Okay, sure.
So they were launching a series, a cartoon series called Ren and Stimpy.
Yes.
Was that Nick?
That was Nickelodeon.
It was Nickelodeon. And they really liked Raymond Scott music. They had heard one of the cassettes I'd been sending around, and they wanted to license it for the Ren and Stimpy show. And Columbia stepped in and said, well, why use all these private recordings in Raymond Scott's garage when you can use ours? We've got the commercial versions of the Raymond Scott quintet from the 30s. Right. So I spent a summer of 92 in the studio with a woman named Deborah Parkinson at Sony or Columbia, CBS, whatever it was back then, while she was using a Cedar system to clean up all these old metal masters. And occasionally a little young guy who was going to get signed to Columbia would come into the studio just to hang around and watch what was going on. His name was Jeff Buckley.
What?
So he would just hang around and watch the process because he was interested in the whole thing. So that is when Raymond Scott...
I heard that the music of Raymond Scott depressed him. No? Okay.
No, Jeff was, what's the word, omnivorous in terms of his musical tastes. So anyway, that was the beginning of the Raymond Scott revival.
This is too, I shouldn't even, but just for my own, there were a couple of volumes of, I believe, John Zorn who put together the Carl Stalling Project. There were a couple of, were you involved in that? Did that help the cause? Did that hurt the cause?
I hurt Warner Brothers.
Okay. I don't know what that means.
I hurt Warner Brothers. Now it can be told.
All right.
They issued the Carl Stalling Project.
Which I loved.
Which I loved. And I'm going through it. I'm living, there's a Raymond Scott melody. There's a Raymond Scott melody. Man, there's another Raymond Scott melody. Huh, how come they're not paying royalties on these things?
Right.
How come that Raymond Scott is only mentioned like once or twice in here?
Right.
So what's going on? So I got with Raymond Scott's publisher. And I said, here's this album. There's like Raymond Scott's all over it, but he's not acknowledged. What's going on here? And they said, And
that was a big seller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they looked into it. And this is way too complicated to explain. It would take me 15 minutes to explain what is known as the Rear Window case. And yes, it does refer to the Hitchcock film.
Okay.
But it was, let's just say that there was a change in the copyright law that would have required Warner Brothers to pay royalties on the use of Raymond Scott music in their cartoons, even though the cartoons were properly, the music was licensed back in the 40s and 50s.
Right.
Once that was resolved, I later found out that when Warner Brothers discovered all that Raymond Scott music on the Carl Stalling Project, they ordered whoever wrote the liner notes to take Raymond Scott's name out of the liner notes as much as possible, and we're not going to pay any royalties, and just shh. So they got caught. They had to pay, and there was a huge financial settlement between Warner Brothers and Raymond Scott's publisher on the use of all of Raymond Scott's music in the cartoons, which were then appearing on VHS tapes.
So as a, this is another aspect of being a landmark preservationist.
Yeah, it's like I like to tell people, I don't work for any corporations. They work for me.
Right, right.
If they own rights that I administer, I'm going to benefit from the work that they do, and I never have to go to their offices.
And the the family of Raymond Scott also
they were delighted.
Yeah,
I mean, Mitzi Scott finally got some money. Raymond passed away in 1994.
Okay.
February 8th it was. And that made his obit was everywhere, because by then he was being acknowledged for what he had done.
And the Bohunks.
People were doing cover versions. His music was being licensed for TV. You want to go to the next?
Let's see the next. We have a couple more Raymond Scott images. So
I want to just quickly point out that that's Raymond Scott. They were in a living room, it appears.
Which one is Raymond Scott?
The one on the right is Raymond Scott.
Okay.
The drummer is named Johnny Williams. He is the father of the famous composer John Williams.
Now that is interesting.
And Johnny Williams,
I did not know that.
Incredible drummer.
Rand, did you know that?
I did not. Johnny Williams drumming with the Raymond Scott Quintet is just phenomenal. And I'm a drummer. I acknowledge this guy is just an ace.
All right, so that's pretty cool. All right, next.
Well, we later found out that I knew that Raymond had worked in electronic music, but I didn't know the extent of it. But to make a very long story short, Raymond was an engineer. He went to Brooklyn Technical High School. He really was obsessed with machines, with devices, with inventions, with electricity, with electronics. It's what he really wanted to do. He said he was born to be an engineer, that he really didn't like working with people. When he worked with bands, they always had a problem because he was a bully. He wanted everything to be perfect.
Right.
And
sure.
human beings do not perform as perfectionists. They could not match Raymond's perfectionism.
But machines
can.
All right.
So eventually he built his own music making devices. And what you're seeing here is Raymond Scott's studio in Farmingdale, Long Island in 1967. That photo was taken by Jim Henson.
Famed puppeteer.
Muppeteer. He and Raymond worked on some experimental films early on. Raymond did the electronic soundtracks and Jim did the animation. So Jim would visit Raymond a lot. And that wasn't just Raymond's electronic music studio. That's where he lived. That was his home.
All right.
He lived in an industrial space.
Well, your apartment
Okay.
has looked a little like that as well.
So that's 1967.
All right, let's keep move. Can we jump to Esquivel? Would that be all right with you?
That's what happened next.
Okay, let's go
As
to
far as my landmark preservation goes.
yeah. Let's go to slide 12.
Okay.
Look at this handsome guy.
So, shall I just continue the chronicle?
Continue, and let me just jump in as someone who's a Irwin Chusid preservationist. But you know, I moved to Hoboken in '94. I'm reading the liner notes of a Mose Allison compilation.
Alice in Wonderland.
And who's this guy? Or what kind of name is Irwin Chuz? You know. And then I pick up at Pierre Platter's, the Esquivel, because everybody's talking about this space age bachelor music.
Jump ahead two frames. That one. So
that was up in the window, the upstairs window of Pierre Platter's, and then I'm like, who is this Irwin? And there was an article in the freaking New York Times. Did you know that?
About Esquivel.
By you.
About me. I would have known that. I don't recollect it, but I would have known that at the time.
Okay.
That article would not have escaped my notice.
All right.
I can promise you.
I'm like, who is this? And you know, I think that mentioned you lived in Hoboken, and I was intrigued. But so this, all right.
I had written liner notes, by the way, for Rhino Records back in the 80s. I had done 4 sets of liner notes for the Golden Throats series. I did a Julie London compilation, the Mose Allison. It was called Alice in Wonderland, a big Mose Allison fan. I did a Ken Nordine liner notes. I was, you know, making a buck here and there writing. That's what I really wanted to do, but it never turned into a full-time thing. So I did the Raymond Scott thing. I thought, okay, I guess I will forever be known as the Raymond Scott guy. One accomplishment, not bad. I'm still a DJ, but FMU was local at that point. So as I said, at 40, I was broke. At 42, I was broker. And I was trying to pitch around Esquivel. I'd been collecting his records. By the way, I'm not a record collector. If you come to my apartment to take a picture of me for an article you're writing about me, you cannot take a photo of me in front of my record wall. Not you, but the world. Telling you people, I'm not a record collector. Record collectors are a lower life form.
No, they're
I'm a guy,
sweet, beardy guys.
I'm a guy who collects music.
Okay. So there is a difference. There's a huge difference.
There is a difference.
There is a fetishization.
So here's this Esquivel music that I learned
who was
about.
that? Who was Esquivel?
I learned about it through Byron Werner. Same guy.
Yeah.
Byron Werner coined the phrase space age bachelor pad music. Back in the 70s or 80s, he was crazy about all this Martin Denny and Russ Garcia and Bob Thompson and Les Baxter and Esquivel, all this easy listening music.
Kind of lounge, tiki.
Yeah. You could go into a record store back then and you wouldn't find it in the bins. You'd find it under the bins.
Yeah, nobody
for
wanted
a quarter
this
a pop. Nobody wanted this stuff. It was just considered landfill. And Byron was collecting this stuff and going, no, this stuff is genius. You got to hear this. So Byron was sending out cassettes. He introduced Matt Groening to Esquivel's music, which is why the Simpsons theme has a bit, or I don't know if it still does, but it had a space age bachelor pad lilt to it because Byron and Matt were friends. They were in high school together. And he introduced, and Matt said, "Oh, this stuff is crap." And Byron said, "You just wait, you're going to like it." And within a few years, Matt became a big fan of this music as well, and so did I. And we were playing it on FMU, and we were playing Esquivel records. You couldn't buy CDs; there were none available. And I decided this stuff needs to be released on a CD. Why? So I can hear it without the clicks and pops.
Okay.
All right. I'm tired of listening to crappy vinyl, scratched up vinyl. I want to hear it on a cleaned up CD. But the masters were owned by RCA Victor.
Okay. And
I went up and had meetings with them. And, oh, you're the Raymond Scott guy. Oh, well, what else you got? Well, this guy Esquivel, I think you'd like this. I don't really think there's a market for that. I don't think we're going to do this.
Right.
I was rejected by a number of people there that didn't see any market for Esquivel.
Okay.
And I remember going home and thinking, it's just not going to happen. I'm going to go to my grave as the Raymond Scott guy who does a radio show on that little local.
Okay, not so bad.
And knows a lot about baseball.
Right.
History. So I was sitting on Washington Street, that's in Hoboken, a diner that was on the corner of 6th and Washington. It's not there anymore.
The Midtown Diner.
Castle Point.
This would have been 93.
It's a Midtown Diner.
I would go there and sit out there. I was broke. Okay. So, those are my broker years. And I'm sitting there, and along comes this guy, Glenn Morrow, from Bar None Records.
Sure.
Based in Hoboken.
Rand, has he been on the program? He's not been.
Yes.
And
he has been on the program.
It
was interviewed by Danny Schott.
Okay. So I knew about Bar None, great label, and here comes Glenn. He says, well, what are you doing? And he said, well, what projects are you working on? And I said, well, I'm really trying to get this Esquivel thing.
Yeah.
These recordings by who says who? And I tried explaining what space age bachelor pad music was. By then it had a name that kind of codified the genre, but it was very unofficial. And he said, why don't you come by the office and just, bring us a cassette and play it for us and we'll give it a listen. He was interested because I was interested in it.
Right.
So I played it for them in the office and they flipped over it. They loved it. And they said, what do we do? And I said, well, the last I spoke to someone at RCA Victor, they said, we're not going to put this out, but if you can find an independent label that'll put it out, we'll license it to them. We'll do the transfers from the tapes, we'll clean up the masters and give them, but they have to guarantee that they'll sell 5,000 copies of this CD. And if they don't, they have to pay us for 5,000.
Okay.
So Glenn Morrow said, do you think we could sell 5,000 of these? And I said, I don't know. It's your record label. It's your investment. I believe in it. I love it. I know a lot of people who love it. I think there's a market, but how big? I don't have a clue.
Yeah.
So they decided to go ahead with it. We called it Space Age Bachelor Pad Music. Elizabeth Van Italy, that's Glenn's wife.
Okay.
Designed the cover.
I did not know that.
And
Rand, did you know that?
I did not.
The initial pressing of the CD was sold out before it was released. The advance orders were such that they immediately had to up the pressing.
The kids went crazy.
The kids went crazy. It launched the whole space age.
Yeah,
I call it space age pop revival. And Esquivel became an icon.
Sure.
And
he was still alive.
I didn't know that. I found out he was still alive. When I started talking to him on the phone, and at some point he was so grateful that he was making money again. Yeah. He was an invalid. He was living in Hoboken at his brother's house. He had a back injury.
Would you say that town again?
Hoboken.
Okay, go ahead. That's fine.
And he was really delighted, especially because journalists were calling him. Let me clarify that. He was really delighted because lady journalists were calling him. Okay. If you were a male journalist and you called Esquivel, you'd get 15 minutes with him. Right. You're a lady journalist, he's not letting you off the phone.
Okay, whatever. it
He
takes.
loved the ladies. I think he was married 6 times. I don't know. He was married a lot. He legendary Lothario from Mexico, but eventually went to Hollywood and did years in Vegas. He did music for a couple of TV shows.
Yeah.
I mean, he was on the Tonight Show, backup one, palled around with a Hoboken born crooner.
Jimmy Roselli.
Yeah. Nice hat. I love those fedoras. So anyway, he was famous within a certain circle. He was doing soundtracks for films, for TV. He had his big band, and he was also a perfectionist, very demanding. And but anyway, at this point in his life, and when the album came out, and then Barnum did a follow-up called "Music from a Sparkling Planet," which was equally successful. We would talk on the phone, he and I, and he would tell me he wanted to share his money with me, and I'm like, I don't want to just take your money.
Right.
I mean, if I can earn it. So I said, so who's your manager? And he says, I don't have one. I said, well, maybe I can do for him what I'm doing for Raymond Scott.
Yeah.
And his then widow. And I said, let me come down to Hoboken and spend a few days with you, and we'll meet, we'll talk. I'll bring a little draft of a contract, and let's get acquainted. So I went down there. I spent a few days with him. I mean, I was seeing a guy who was either in bed or in a wheelchair. He could barely get around.
Wait, that was me.
He was very nice. Had a wonderful time with him, and we kind of solidified this bond. And I became his manager for a number of years, for the rest of his life, and I still represent his widow.
And thus, a career of sorts was.
So then
born.
I was the Raymond Scott guy, and I was the Esquivel guy, who also did a radio show on this increasingly more well-known station, because by then it was appearing on the internet.
And all right, now go looking at the time. All right, where
are we?
It's 7:52, for goodness sake.
I can talk, can't I?
Yeah,
I do go on.
You got a mouth on you. I definitely want to talk about a thing that how you describe what you do to me, which I loved, is that you've gotten to pick. You only work with things that you are interested in, that you are passionate about. These, the Raymond Scott, the Esquivel.
Wasn't always the case, but on the other hand,
but now
I won't work on
happy.
I can't work on something that I don't have any kind of passion for. I can't. I don't believe in it. Well, part of me is a salesman. Okay, I got to admit it. Part of me is a salesman. I'm a Jew, so I'm a salesman, right? I got to sell things, and I got to believe in what I'm selling. So Raymond Scott, I felt this passion that I need to get people to like Raymond Scott. I wanted to share it with them, and I wanted them to hear what I heard. Same with Esquivel.
And I would argue that this next one, I would say, when that obituary is written, I think this one will be above the other two.
I kind of agree.
Sun Ra.
Right. Now, I did not discover Sun Ra.
Not. From outer space by way of the Schuylkill Expressway?
Saturn.
Okay.
He was from Saturn.
All right.
I didn't discover. I was actually very late to the game with Sun Ra, but
a great name in weirdo jazz.
Yeah, I knew about him, but I wasn't deeply educated in Sun Ra. But an opportunity arose around 2013 where there were some predators who were taking advantage of a friend of mine who was working with the Sun Ra archive. And
Sun Ra himself
he'd passed he had departed.
Yeah.
Sorry, he did not pass.
He went back to
Saturn in 1993.
Okay.
I went to help my friend Michael Anderson of the Sun Ra Music Archive, who had all these tapes. And
I know where he lives.
He was really he lives in New Jersey. He was struggling. I love Michael. We'd known each other. He did a show on FMU for many years. And I offered to help him, and eventually it led me to Sun Ra's heirs. He has a family. Never talked about them in public. But I began to get a sense of the rights issues that were involved and who was making claims that had no authorization, who the frauds were, who the pirates were, who was being a predator on the Sun Ra catalog. And I dove into it. And the more I learned about Sun Ra and his music, the more I loved the guy and his music, and at that point, it became easy to do it with no guarantee of success. I was fighting legal battles on behalf of his rights and his heirs. And we started doing reissues of his classic Saturn label records.
Right.
I started administering rights, but I was fighting one particular man who, Bernard Stolman. I can mention him because he's no longer on this planet, but he's not on the planet that Sun Ra is on either.
Let's look at another image of Sun Ra. Look at that. This is an older Sun Ra.
Yeah, I had to fight Bernard Stolman for a year with lawyers.
Would that be Marshall Allen?
No, it's John Gilmore.
Oh, that would have been a great connection if I was able.
John Gilmore's a great connection,
Right.
but Marshall Allen is not in this photo.
All right.
He's still leading the band.
Yes.
Eventually, I vanquished Bernard Stolman and got all the rights settled for the heirs, and it helped Michael. And we were able to then, at that point, I became the administrator for Sun Ra's catalog. And I'm proud to say that 3 months after Bernard Stolman waived his claims on everything Sun Ra, he died. So I take pride that I was able to put this man in his grave.
Okay.
To me, he was just, he was vulturous.
All right.
I can't say anything nice about Bernard. Well, he was crazy. He could be entertaining in a crazy way, but he made life difficult for me and a lot of other people. He was the founder of ESP Disc, and some people admire him. He did some amazing things, but to me, I had issues with him.
So you've been able to sort of clean up the Sun Ra catalog,
Yeah.
and it's yeah.
Yeah, is there another Sun Ra image?
Well, there's an image coming up of a.
Oh, okay.
What's this?
The big reveal. This has never been seen before in public. Those of you watching this right now are seeing this before the rest of the world sees it.
Enjoy this, Eric Kammer.
Yep. I am working on a book with Fantagraphics. By the way, I've done 4 books with Fantagraphics.
We love
of
Fantagraphics.
Jim Flora art, but we'll get to that later.
Not too much later.
I'm working on it with my buddy Chris Reisman. He runs Hudson Valley Vinyl up in Beacon, New York. And we are putting together a book, an anthology, a compilation of Sun Ra album covers, of which there seemed to be an infinite number.
Right.
So many of them were handmade and hand colored.
Okay.
So that's the actual cover designed by Laura Lindgren. And we've got essays by John Corbett. He's a Sun Ra scholar. A guy named Glenn Jones, not that Glenn Jones.
The guitarist Glenn Jones.
From Cul-de-sac.
Yes.
Who worked at Rounder Distribution and got Sun Ra his distribution deal
Nice.
back in the 70s. And I've written an essay for it. And we've got hundreds of Sun Ra covers, album covers, and labels. The labels are also hand designed.
That'll be fabulous. Do we know when this?
So far, we're on schedule for fall 2022 publication.
So for a holiday, for not this holiday season, but the next holiday season.
If there is a holiday season in 2022,
well,
yes, this would be an excellent gift.
Hopefully you got an advance then.
For the Sun Ra enthusiast in your life, or for the Afrofuturist enthusiast in your life.
And then let's just to clarify, because the Sun Ra Orchestra still exists.
Yeah.
But that is separate from the Sun Ra estate.
I don't have an involvement with the orchestra, although I look in on them, obviously, and I try to help Marshall Allen all I can.
97 years old, leading the...
Marshall joined Sun Ra in 1956.
Yeah.
Marshall Allen has played with the Sun Ra Orchestra longer than Sun Ra did.
Wow. Well, sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
He's still leading the band.
I just saw him last week opening for Yola Tango.
People
at
just
Hanukkah.
rave about their performances. They're amazing.
And Grammy nominated. They put out a new album.
Swirling.
Yeah.
On Strut, the label that I do some Sun Ra work with.
Okay.
Yep.
Let us, just because we're really running out, so I want to just let's go through the images of other
WFMU.
things. This is down at in Jersey City at
That's the main
Exchange
studio.
Place.
Love those stains in the ceiling.
And now the Irwin Chusid show, the freeform show, that since the pandemic, that hasn't been on. Will that return?
I'd like to.
Okay.
The only
we'd
reason
like
it's
to.
I'm off the air,
I think Gaylord and I would like that.
doing freeform is because they wanted the shows done live remotely, and I did not want to do that.
Okay.
I did not want to basically invite the listeners into my apartment.
Where they would try to photograph you.
Well, where they would hear all the noise that goes on.
Thank you,
throughout the day.
Eric. First, thank God you're all right. And two, thank you, the regular loyal viewer. And you should check out. But there's another WFMU show that you're the producer.
I haven't left the station. I'm still on the station. I actually, when I say I'm on the station, I'm producing a show.
Let's see this next image. What is this show? This is on.
Okay, so there's this guy.
Yeah.
I'm rolling my eyes again.
All right, not the full story because
his name is Courtney T. Edison. He goes by the name of the old codger. He's been on the radio since 1991.
I have this image on a T-shirt.
He's actually been on radio since 1928.
Yeah.
How old is he? He says he's got to be 164.
That's
he was buddies with Mark Twain.
Yeah.
He's been around.
Right.
He's cranky. He only plays 78 RPM records. He tells stories that are just of such dubious veracity.
Yeah. And where and when can people hear
so
this?
So he's on Tuesday nights from 7 to 8 p.m. I produce the show. I have to put up with him.
Yeah.
I sometimes drive him down to the station.
He lives locally.
He lives in East Orange.
Okay. He's still
in a bunker.
By the old
on Springdale Avenue.
The transmitter is still in East Orange.
Yeah, he's got shoes older than you.
His
third set of dentures are older than you.
All right, so people should check
that out. By the way,
he
often tells people he loves younger women. I can do an imitation of him.
Why do just
I've spent so much time around him that I can do an imitation of him. It's like,
Eric, listen to this.
I love those younger women, age 45 or 50, but I ain't messing with no 35-year-old jailbait.
Okay.
He says things like
all right.
I got shoes older than you.
So that's and if you go to WFMU.
But I'm not him.
If you go to WFMU.org, you can check out archives of not just the old codger program, but also if you just search for Irwin. Thank you, Eric. Eric says, I listened many years with JM in the AM, which was Jewish music in the morning. Nachum.
When I was on, it was JM in the afternoon, Jewish man in the afternoon, JM in the PM.
The biggest fundraising show in WFMU history.
Right. Not terribly relevant as regards
brought their own fundraising cards. I enjoyed that.
I am friends with Nachum Siegel. Great guy. Wonderful man. So anyway, yeah. Then
next image. I own this book.
And there's a book. That was my first book. I never thought I'd write a book, but it was an editor for Chicago Review Press, Yuval Taylor, who had read some articles I'd written for the New York Press about strange musicians like Shuby Taylor, Lucia Pamela, the legendary Stardust Cowboy, the
DJ
Shags.
Snowden.
I hadn't written about her then. I didn't know about her yet.
Okay.
So Yuval was determined. He was confident I had a book in me, and I said, I don't have a book in me. And I said, I don't even know what topic to write a book about. I mean, I don't know, outsider music. And he said, send me a proposal.
Yeah.
So I did, and it got accepted. And I said, oh God, now I got to write a book. So I took the articles I'd written about various outsider musicians. I created the genre outsider music. Outsider art has existed, art brut.
Sure.
It's folk art that existed for 100 years or more, but no one for some reason ever put the word outsider and music together to define a genre that, little did I realize, I've been collecting for years. So I wrote this book and codified the genre.
Got your boy Harry Parch in there.
Harry Parch, very much an outsider. Sun Ra could have been in that book. He was an outsider, but there was already a book about Sun Ra, so
yeah,
and it had just come out like a year before. The Life, Space is the Place, The Life and Times of Sun Ra by John Zwed, which I highly recommend. It's a wonderful book. So he didn't need to be in my book. Another person who could have been in my book but wasn't, which was recommended by my editor, Yuval, he says, we need a bigger name in here. how about Brian Wilson? And I said, Brian Wilson is an outsider. There's no question. He's an outsider, but by my standards. But I don't think I could make the case that a guy who has sold 50 bazillion records is an outsider.
Right. Right.
So I didn't. Brian Wilson's mentioned in the book, but
As-
there's no deep dive.
As a
Brian
human,
Wilson.
he's a bit of an outsider.
As a musician, as an arranger,
Right,
as a
yeah,
studio
but,
engineer, as a thinker, he's very much an outsider.
But
by-
as
by my standards.
as a recording artist, he's
An outsider.
okay.
All the
then he
way.
should have been in the book.
But he had a gift for being
Should
able
have
to
been
tap
in the book.
into sounds that were so pleasing to the ear that he could sell millions of records. Sure.
Right.
Does not apply to Lucia Pamela, Wesley Willis.
This is another, and it's a testament to you, or it's a knock at me that I owned all this stuff before knowing you. This one is.
How much time do we have?
It's in Canada. We're already past 8:00, but Canadian school? Or am I making that up?
Vancouver. Well,
Okay.
Not even the suburbs, rural areas around Vancouver at the time.
And how did you stumble upon this?
Okay, so from 1997 to 2002, I did an hour-long show called Incorrect Music
Mentioned
on
already.
WFMU with
Michelle
Michelle Boulay.
Boulay.
Love, she's passed on. But
Took
I
the
loved Michelle.
Talmoda photo.
Favorite people in my life. It was not outsider music. Outsider music was on the show, but it was also the Golden Throats genre of William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy attempting to, warble their way through pop songs. It was just a lot of strange music, and we called it incorrect music because it wasn't correct. And we would get submissions from listeners, and a lot of them were interesting, and some of them weren't. But one guy in Canada, Brian Linz, sends me a mix CD with 15 or 20 tracks on there, and they were just sort of haphazardly flagged. And he didn't say focus on this one. He just 20 tracks. On comes this version of Space Oddity, the David Bowie tune,
Sure.
done by what sounded like a bunch of children in a gymnasium where there were very sparse instrumentation. And they're just banging on a drum, crashing a cymbal, playing elementary chords on an acoustic guitar. And and they're singing off key, and the rhythm isn't quite there. And it was beautiful. It was heavenly.
Yeah.
It was the gateway drug to outsider music.
Okay.
I fell in love with it,
Yeah,
and we
yeah.
played it on the radio, and the listeners were just flipping over it, saying, "What is this thing?" And I'm thinking, "What is this thing? Where did it come from?"
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
not like you could have walked into a music store and purchased sheet music for an arrangement of Space Oddity for 60-voice children's choir and Orff instruments, but that's what someone did.
Right.
So I asked this guy, Brian, where did you get this? He said, "Oh, it was a record I found in a thrift store." Didn't even have a title. It wasn't called the Langley Schools Music Project.
Right.
It wasn't called anything.
Right.
It was a recording made at a school, or 3 schools. Lockhill, South Carval, and Glenwood Region Music Group, it was called, led by a guy named Hans Fenger in 1976. They were doing classic rock, and they were doing it in a gymnasium, no audience.
Yeah. Making it fun for the kids by doing the contemporary
Absolutely.
songs. Sure.
I said, "Send me the whole record." So he sends me the whole record, and I flipped over. It was 30 minutes of music, 9 songs, and I said, "We got to put this out.
Yeah.
Who owns it?" "I don't know." Nobody knew. So I start phoning.
You go in the phone book, you look for
I'm looking for the
Zanger.
online at that point.
All right.
I'm looking for all the people named on the back of the record.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Faculty, student advisor. I don't know. They're kids,
Yeah,
but
okay.
there's some adults, I guess, on the back. And I would call these school districts, talk to these administrators, these principals, these teachers. Nobody had a clue about these records. This record is one record. And finally, I like the 10th guy I spoke to said, there's one name on here, Pat Bickerton. Says, "Oh, Pat, he died like around 1976, but his son Mike still teaches around here. Call Mike, he'll know
Yeah.
what this is about."
Yeah.
I call Mike Bickerton, and he's explaining, "Oh yeah, this was done in a gymnasium. It was just, we pressed 300 copies for the students and their parents and the teachers, and it was just a fun little thing. It was led by a guy named Hans Fenger. Here's his phone number. Why don't you give him a call?" So I called Hans Fanger. Actually, I called Hans Fanger and I got his answering machine. And the voice on the answering machine sounded like someone who was like 28 years old. I thought, that can't be the same Hans Fanger.
Right.
He calls me back. And yeah, same guy. He just had a young voice. And he starts telling me, how did you find this record? No one's ever had this. He had moved away years later and was still teaching in Vancouver. But he didn't have a clue how I found out about this thing. And I told him I was interested in putting it out. And he said, well, there's another record that I did the next year at the Wicks Brown School. But it's not as good because I started messing around with the arrangements. I said, send it to me. I'm accelerating the chronicle here.
Please do.
He sends me this other record, which was longer. And I said, it's better because they do good vibrations.
Yeah.
And they do, there's a solo of a girl singing The Long and Winding Road accompanied by piano. And there's a girl singing Desperado accompanied by piano. And here's this group, they're playing the Orff instruments and these kids are just singing off key and they're singing Calling Occupants of Interplanetary Craft.
Yes.
I just thought, by then I was like ready to spend every nickel that I had saved at that point to get this record out.
Yeah.
Bar none wanted to do it. I entitled it The Langley Schools Music Project. I helped design the cover. It came out shortly after 9/11. It was scheduled to come out in early October 2001.
All right.
We all
back
know
a little
we
bit.
got pushed back a little bit. When it came out, you can see the thing on the right. It's a screen capture of Amazon. It's number one. It was number one when it got released.
Sold more than 5,000.
It stayed number one for a while. Then it went down to number two. Then it went back to number one. Then it went back to number two. It bounced around between 1 and 5 for quite a while.
And though not launching a craze or genre, it inspired people who put together movie trailers because you'll hear a song sung by a modern song sung by children. And I think it all comes from there.
It inspired Jack Black to do School of Rock.
Yeah.
It inspired, what's the woman's name from the It's Karen
O.
She was a big fan of this record, and she did something that was children music related. It got licensed for some films. I worked out a deal, by the way. I mean, I couldn't simply do it without permission. So between Hans, a Dutch label called Basta, who really wanted to put this thing out.
Sure.
But they knew they couldn't reach the American market the way bar none could. And the Langley District 35, Langley number 35 school district, they are a royalty participant in it to use the money for instruments, for music education. Or
did any
whatever.
of the kids come forward and say,
lots
hey,
of them.
what's in it for me?
There was some of them did, but most of them were just proud. See, none of them could claim ownership. There were actually like 240 kids involved in all these recordings.
Right.
And Hans didn't claim he owned them, and the school district didn't claim they owned it. So we worked out sort of a profit sharing arrangement. And then VH1 stepped in and did a documentary about it after about 6 months. And I will say again, sort of a first here, a reveal. There could have been a second record because there's more. Hans continued doing these types of recordings in Vancouver, and I have them, and they're equally wonderful.
Right.
But by then, I realized every kid on these records, or their parents, are going to want a piece of the action.
Right.
And I'll never get this thing licensed. So there's enough material for a follow-up that'll never come out.
And all right, the show is pretty much over. Let's just show. Well, now let's do this last. Let's go to Jim Flora. Then
that's Jim Flora. He's an artist. I discovered his artwork. I fell in love with it. He did album cover. I'm talking fast now. Our album cover art. Also did a lot of fine art,
a lot of jazz, classic jazz,
children's books.
Covers.
It's his best known cover. That's Jim Flora, 1955, Mambo for Cats.
I bought a print of this from you.
Right, but his album covers were known, and his children's books were known, but his fine art was not. And I met him before he died in 1998. I worked out a deal with his family, who inherited his art and put it in storage and didn't know what to do with it. And I loved his art, and I wanted to tell the world about Jim Flora art.
Yeah,
so jimflora.com is where you can learn more about Jim Flora. Go to the next one. Well, there's a couple of covers, magazine covers.
Amazing.
In the early 50s.
Yeah.
Great style, really mischievous. And this is his.
This is. You've been looking at this all evening. This has been the image.
It's a woodcut
behind us.
And we've done prints of
his
it. We have the
pièce de
original-
résistance.
We have the original woodcut. It's called Railroad Town. I named one of my music publishing companies after it.
Nice. And now, your
Back
most
up to,
current project.
Back up to. So there's this cover.
This was an album that came out in what year?
1970.
1970, featuring at least a couple of names that people familiar with this sort of thing are
Robert Palmer.
Robert,
Not that Robert
not
Palmer.
that, but the other
Robert Palmer, the writer,
New York Times music critic,
the blues historian,
deep blues.
Luke Faust, Trevor Kohler.
Luke Faust, who lived locally until very recently.
Now lives in Albuquerque.
Um,
Nancy Jeffries and Bill Barth. That was the insectress. And Bernard Purdy was the drummer. Loved this record, always did.
I heard it was Ringo. Anyway.
So that's a very inside joke.
Yeah, thank you.
I understand it.
But
I'll let other people look into
to
it.
have an album called Hoboken Saturday Night.
It's a great cover because it captures Hoboken. I mean, there's probably scenes like that still exist in Hoboken. But
Sure.
that was Hoboken in 1968, 69. I love the record. It's a great record. It's very eclectic. There's a lot
and it's
to love
been
about that record.
reissued a time or two.
Yeah. But I was always fascinated by that cover.
It's classic
And-
Hoboken.
Probably 15 years ago, going through in a thrift shop, I found a T-shirt that
Okay.
had that on the T-shirt, that
All right,
cover
all right.
art, and it was already worn out. And I loved it so much that I wore out a shirt that was already worn out to the point where it was so ripped up, it wasn't even punk rock anymore. It was just a rag. I threw it out, and I thought, I always wanted another T-shirt that had Hoboken Saturday Night on it.
Yeah.
So I stopped in here at the museum a couple months ago and talked to Bob Foster, and I said,
The
you know, this-
director of the Hoboken Historical
Right. He
Museum.
says, I know about the record.
Yeah.
He says, yeah, I want to make a great T-shirt. He says, yeah, we could sell them here as a benefit. I said, yeah, sure.
Okay.
We could, And he says, well, Luke Faust did that art, and maybe Luke still has the original art. I said, huh.
Yeah.
So I got in touch
Look in the phone book.
with Luke Faust, and he's just moved to Albuquerque. And he said, yeah, it's got the original plate. It was a metal plate.
Now from Hoboken, do you take a left turn to Albuquerque? Or how does it?
You have to go through Ohio
Okay.
or Kentucky, I forget.
So a plate.
It's a metal plate. So I said to Luke, you still got the metal plate?
Yeah.
He says, yeah. He says, I was going to destroy it because that's what you do when you make a plate and do an addition, you destroy the original so it can't be duplicated again.
Okay.
But he never did an addition.
Right.
And his wife, Dina, talked him out of destroying the plate.
Okay.
I said, so you still got the plate? And he says, yeah. So I explained what I wanted to do. I want to do T-shirts, but I also
T-shirts.
want to do 50 fine art prints of
Okay.
that album art. He says, well, the writing isn't on it, the typography. He says, I don't care. We can put that in.
Right.
Send me the plate. So
You have it. You've received it.
Luke,
Look at this. That's the original
This is the original metal
plate.
It's
from
it
which
looks like nothing, but it's etched, manually etched, and it's backwards. The image is backwards because when you print it, it comes out forward.
now if you put that on a turntable, not with any
No.
no.
But
Okay.
anyway, first of all, it's bigger than the album art, doesn't have the typography.
Yeah.
And I asked, and the condition's very good. It's got to be cleaned. It's a little warped, but I think we can fix the warp. And hopefully we can make prints of these and lay in the typography so it says Hoboken Saturday Night. Luke is very happy for us to do this. And I forgot where I was. Oh, so I asked Luke, I said, where is this?
Yeah.
Where is this scene? He says that was looking out his back window on there's the clothesline pole,
Sure.
the tenements, Hoboken. He says it's not there anymore. It was 3rd and Hudson.
Okay.
He said it's one of those really big Soviet style parking garages
Okay.
that are down there now. They knocked down the buildings, so this view doesn't exist
All
anymore.
right. Well, then
But hopefully we can
it's a bit of history
do prints of
and
that. Yeah.
And I heard something about it'll benefit the museum.
Oh, the prints would be for a benefit. Yeah, I want to do it. I'll finance it, and they can sell the prints here and sell the T-shirts here. And I just think it's an iconic image of Hoboken 50 years ago.
All right, that's excellent. Irwin, thank you so much.
I have so much more to tell.
Well, maybe we can invite you back for the episode 86, I guess, if you're free. But thank you, and it's delightful to hear you talk about these projects, because it's clear that even though it became a career and then you've reaped some financial benefit from it, it's clear that you get a great personal satisfaction from getting the work out there in a proper way, and also benefiting the families, and I think that's wonderful.
And it's great that you could have me on here to settle some scores for the historical record.
Absolutely. All right. Let's cut to the end credits here. Coming soon. How about Lindsay Swindow? And this is a very, very special. Is Bob doing this interview himself?
Yes.
I mean, not that Lindsay Swindow isn't very, very special, but people have been clamoring for this one. Eric Kammer, Hoboken Talk's most loyal fan. Let's get the inside story. What's going on with this guy? Why does he love Hoboken so much?
Love JM and the AM too.
All right. So that's going to be great. Now I have in the new year, I have a couple of interviews coming up as well. We always thank the family and the memory of Donald Shackett, who in his will remembered the Hoboken Historical Museum, and which allows for programs such as this. And that is a wonderful gift. The New Jersey Historical Commission. That was the technological grant, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Rand?
Mm-hmm.
This Irwin is a broadcast professional. He was marveling at these microphones and the lights we have and the green screen. That was the Historical Commission helped us out with that, so we thank them.
You got a bigger budget than WFMU.
How about the Applied Development Company? Not just regular supporters of the museum, but this physical space would not exist. We are tenants of the Applied Development Company for the grand sum of $1 a year. That's pretty cool.
Can I put in a word for Rancho Malario Cigars?
No.
And Sly Weezer Bourbon?
No.
Sponsors of the Orchidra Radio Show.
No. The current exhibit, and you got to come see it. And the museum is not open on Christmas Day, New Year's Day, but it's open during the holidays. So if you have time off and you haven't had a chance, come up here. The current exhibit, Irwin was admiring it before. It's called The Avenue, A History of Washington Street. And you can see many of the great businesses that are gone and some that still exist. And the show currently upstairs through January 2nd. Irwin, look at this stuff. It is amazing. That was a sarcastic gasp, but or you're having a seizure. The amazing Frank Hanavan. You've seen him on the streets of Hoboken doing en plein air artwork, and all recent work by him, and it's just outstanding. And each one that I was like, no, that's my favorite. That's my favorite. They on the day the show opened, they already had the little red dots, meaning somebody bought them already. But doesn't mean you can't come and look at them and enjoy them. So show up here, and that is in the upper gallery where we record Hoboken Talks through January 2nd. And that's all. Eric Kammer was listening to today's show on the train from Hoboken. That's dedication. That's what we love. And we love all of you. Have a great week and tune in again. Thanks.